original question of this series is belief in a God irrational or irrational? So
It's
we can
rational.
obviously we can say based off. I mean, let's say through the use of logic, uh, science, those sort of things, we can use those to rationally conclude that and not necessarily you don't need to have faith. And I think Crave says this too in this video. You don't have to have faith to believe or to think that there's a creator of the universe. It's not. We're not saying what kind of creator it is. We're not saying that it's a triune God or any sort of other deity. We're saying is that there has to be something that caused all this,
Mm-hmm.
and so there needs to be an unmoved mover, a big banger, and that concept doesn't require faith.
Yeah, because I think you're out hitting on something that's a good point. Like a lot of internet atheists do this same kind of thing where it's like, look, the arguments are trying to prove this very general claim, right? And then you critique William Lane Craig or Ed Feser or whoever that they haven't demonstrated and proved this fully robust Christian theism. Now, Ed Feser obviously claims to offer more robust on his argument, but someone like a William Lane Craig or J.P. Moreland or Norm Geisler or whoever are going to say, look, these arguments have limitations. They're just getting you to a creator of some kind. You need further arguments to elaborate and develop what that creator is like. Um, and then they just dismiss the argument because it doesn't prove all of the different things that they think it should prove. It's like, well, yeah, I never meant it to prove all of those things.
Yeah, and then they talk past each other because one's arguing from a point of view that you know is not even being offered, and then there's never a consensus because they're talking past each other, they're not even debating what the real question is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a tactic too. Maybe it's a debate tactic to make the other person look stupid.
Yeah, it could be.
Or I don't know.
Yeah, or maybe just they don't. Maybe they're just not. A lot of debate and discussion online just shows a severe lack of charity of the other person's views, and that's just a disposition that is antithetical to intellectual development and growth. And I think that's what you see. You see that in internet atheism and in Christian videos as well. I mean, you've got some of these. I'm sorry, some of these presuppositional apologists drive me crazy.
We haven't been in college for a while, and we created this podcast to help, hopefully, college age and below to be prepared for when they go to college or when they're in college. And I was thinking about how we're going to approach this, and I wanted to create a podcast to address the overall sense of, is it rational to believe in a God? Because I believe, and I think we touched on this before, that there's an underlying sense on college campuses that Christians are naive,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's kind of a disdain for a theistic worldview as being simplistic and, like I said, naive, and that carries with it like a prejudice on college campuses towards people of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of want to touch on that a little bit because, and I think it's not just in reason, it's not just talking about reason and faith, but I think it touches on a lot of areas. It touches on morality, it touches on your personal culture and the way you look at the world, your worldview, and all those things kind of coalesce together on a college campus, where the worldview of say your professors and the morality of your professors is against what you believe, and vice versa. Like that's why I brought up this topic, because I wanted to address that reality on college campuses.
Sure.
Um,
I mean, so back in the late '90s when we were in college, there were a few professors who were very openly anti-Christian, anti-religious. Hector Avalos, was it Klumpke? I think his name was Klumpke, and a few others. But it didn't seem to be quite as widespread. It seemed to be more, the disposition was, yeah, you guys do your little religion thing in your private area. That's you do that and have fun. But we scientists and philosophers and real thinkers will do all the real work. The real work, you know.
Mhm.
Now Christians are becoming. I mean, and there is that sort of kind of disdain for Christians, like you little punks. But now it carries with it also, like, you're hateful, you're evil, you're out of touch with reality. Most recently, I mean, if you hold a traditional Christian worldview or Christian set of beliefs, and especially about morality, I mean, you're essentially a fascist. I mean, it's come quite a ways in the past 20 years to go from sort of ambivalence to they're harmless morons to you're evil fascists. And yeah, it's a scary trend.
To be Christian is to adhere to a Western oppressive worldview.
Yeah,
As
yeah,
you're talking about, like
yeah.
fascist that way. So yeah, it is scary. I just think it's, those who are, freshmen now in high school, which my son is one,
Hmm.
and those who are entering college, they're going to come across a underlying hostility you and I never had to deal with.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I think you're right.
I want to close with a quote from Robert P. George, and I think you got me onto this guy. He's from Princeton. He's a conservative Catholic professor at Princeton. He must be tenured, because I read all his stuff and I'm like, yes, 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 and I'm like, how is this guy getting away with saying this and working at Princeton? But he must be.
He's talked about that. He said Princeton actually has a pretty good environment with regard to free speech and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I respect that guy. Maybe
Yeah.
props to him
Yeah.
for sticking up to. And if anybody wants to look at and follow him and see what he has to say, he's on Facebook and he posts stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's just so rich and so clear. Like the way he writes is just like, mwah. It's like, it's great. So he said he was at a conference about this topic of Christians on college campuses, and he says there is an antipathy, sometimes an open hostility to religion. Many institutions, even those identified with faith, are suspicious, if not hostile. And he continues, openly traditional religious on campuses are viewed as relics, and not just relics, but bigoted relics.
Yeah.
So if you just come onto a college campus with a Christian worldview, you're looked upon as old-fashioned, out of date. But like I said, not just old-fashioned, out of date, but a bigoted, old-fashioned relic.
Yeah.
So I think that's you're going to a world that is hostile to your worldview, and you need to be ready.
Yep.